Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley. Hello and welcome to episode 71 of the WP Builds podcast. I think I'm getting a little bit excited about this one. It is entitled How to Be Authentic and Produce Lots and Lots of Content with BobWP, Bob Dunn. I'm a big fan of Bob Dunn's, and so I was very pleased to get him on the podcast. It was published on the 12th of April 2018. My name's Nathan Wrigley from pictureandword.co.uk, a web development agency based in the north of England, and I'll be joined a little bit later by David Wormsley from davidwormsley.com. As always, please go over to the podcast episodes on wpbuilds.com. Click on all the buttons, especially the iTunes one, and give us a 5-star review. We'd really like that. There's a Facebook group that you can join. There's well over 1,000 of us now, and you can find that by going to wpbuilds.com/Facebook. If you go to /subscribe, you'll be able to get onto our newsletter. /advertise if you're feeling very generous and you'd like to help us out advertise on the podcast. We now put these episodes out on YouTube, and you go to wpbuilds.com/YouTube. We've got a competition on at the moment. If you go over to wpbuilds.com/win, there's still an opportunity to get a Smart Slider 3 Pro license. So go over there, check it out, enter the competition. There's one more week of that remaining. Okay, so in a moment we'll get stuck right into it. We've got the discussion coming up in a minute. We're talking about GDPR and what we're telling our clients, or cough, in my case, what we're not telling them. We've got the conversation with Bob WP, hooray! And finally at the end, David Wormsley and I talk again about focusing on one thing at the exclusion of all others, and how it turns out that that's the way we view our screens. Okay, first a little word about Bob. I don't know if you've come across Bob, but really you should have done. He's prodigious in the amount of content that he produces, and I've been a big fan of his for ages, so yeah, please stay around for that. But first of all, it's going to be me and David talking about GDPR. I really hope that you enjoy this episode.
Hello, in this discussion we're talking about GDPR and what we are telling our clients. So GDPR is the General Data Protection Regulation, new EU regulation coming in on May the 25th, 2018. So Nathan, were we supposed to be prepared for this? Are you?
No. End of discussion. No, I'm really not actually. I'm quite a big follower of it because the articles that I read in preparation for the news section that I put together, which goes out on a Monday, this is everything now. GDPR has become the story. It's almost like Brexit, which is dominating the British news. It's a bit like GDPR is dominating the WordPress and internet news. And I'm reading lots and lots about it, and it kind of leads me down two paths, really. The first path is to get myself all ready and pay attention and do everything that's happening. And the other path is kind of lethargy and, well, let's just see and wait and see what happens. And I'm opting for the second path, which is not a very cautious approach, but I'm going for let's just wait, see how the land lies, don't do anything massively just yet. And frankly, my customers have not been reaching out to me. My clients haven't been asking me. One has. So I replied with exactly that. I don't think you need to freak out. Let's just wait and see what happens. But my clients are not very... lots of brochure sites and that kind of thing. So there's maybe a contact form on there. And that's about it. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm being cautious. What about you?
Yeah. Do you know what? I think you were the first person who even mentioned it to me. And because I kind of cut off the news, I don't really see stuff. So it's only you, and it's also some of our friends as well who've had to deal with clients coming to them asking about it. But I haven't got a sense of it really. I mean, I guess you watch UK TV. So is there anything you would get from that? Is there anything from the newspapers, or
is it? it has kind of become a bit of a talking point. So, for example, you know, it's the kind of thing that if you work in a business, by now it's quite likely that you'll have hired a consultant, or at least possibly sent one of your employees off to some training about it, that kind of thing. And at the WordCamp that I went to in London last year, Heather Burns spoke about it, and she spoke about it again at WordCamp in Manchester, and I know that she's very busy talking about it. So it's definitely in everybody's minds, and really the idea is a sensible one. I get it; it makes perfect sense because we're in this. It kind of feels almost like we're in the wild west of the internet. You know, it's the beginning of something. We embarked upon the internet, and then cookies were invented, and then tracking came from cookies, and all of a sudden we're in this situation where we've decided over the last 8-10 years that we're going to give an awful lot of personal data over to websites and services that we know nothing about. And the European Union has decided actually it's probably time to rein that in a little bit and have a little bit more oversight. So that's what the legislation is about. It feels to me that it can be interpreted one of two ways. You know, everybody run around with your hair on fire, freak out because this is going to be law, so it needs to be dealt with. And it's important to realise that it's not just law for people in the EU, it's for anybody who deals with EU citizens, although I still have no way of figuring out how they would compel US citizens to obey this law, but there you go. But also it kind of feels like something that we don't need to worry about too much, even though it's going to be law, because on the other hand, I really can't see how this stuff's going to be enforceable anyway. I can't imagine them coming after me, for example, because I'm just small fry.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's interesting because we must be, you know, me and my colleague, we must have well over 100 sites out there, you know, that we were responsible for building in some form or another. But there's only a client that's come to her because it's a church site that she deals with herself that has talked about it. They've got their own protection officer, which surprises me because looking at which companies need a data protection officer, I don't think they come under that because they don't advertise to people their church and they don't gather information for that, which is my understanding where you might need one. But yeah, nothing. But they've gone to town, of course, there. It's somebody's job, you know, so they love it. Somebody retired in the church. They love going through the legislation.
I mean, it feels to me like I could distill the whole of the GDPR into 5 different things, and I know I won't manage all of these 5 off the top of my head, but I'm going to try. It kind of feels like, number one, you need a policy in place so that should any of this come to bite you, you can whip that policy out and demonstrate to somebody that you've thought about it, but also you can follow down the policy if there's a data breach and go through all the points and act upon them. Number 2, you need to be able to allow subscribers to unsubscribe from your list, and also number 3, get any data that you hold upon them by requesting it. Number 4, I've gone blank. What's number 4 and 5?
I think, yeah, so the right to be forgotten is one of the key ones, isn't it? So yeah, that's in a way like opting out of mail stuff, but it's allowed to be forgotten in any of your sort of records. Slightly different. Yeah,
I've forgotten what they are, but essentially that kind of sums it up nicely. You've got more. There is, isn't there? but I've forgotten what it is.
Data breaches. We got.
Oh, that's it.
People know if there's a data breach. Yeah.
So if your site is compromised and you know about it, then you have to get out an email or something to everybody to say this sort of stuff has been taken. So yeah, and the kind of sites that I'm building, it feels. I know I should be taking it seriously, and please forgive me for not running around with my hair on fire, but. The most we usually have is a little contact form. You know, the people will be looking at the site. It'll be a brochure site with a few pages, and there'll be a contact form. And I have actually gone through quite a few of my sites, and it would appear anyway the contact form is very poorly used. You know, they make a big deal of their telephone number, so that's probably the primary way that people are getting in touch with them. But we had a discussion a moment ago thinking about what would it mean for somebody using Contact Form 7 or somebody using Gravity Forms or one of the many form plugins. Does this retain data? Does it hold it in plain text? Can you expunge it from the UI? And so on. And actually, David, I'm staring at the database right now, and it looks like it does hold those email addresses in plain text. I can actually see them.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
But I mean, not that would make a great deal of difference because they'd have to get to your database anyway. But the fact that to me and my clients, it would be very, very simple so long as they didn't delete via the WordPress UI, if they didn't delete all of the contact forms entries, they could simply download that as a CSV file and then literally handcraft an email to each one of those. And in my case, it's probably going to be a few dozen, maybe a few hundred emails to send out, which is no big deal. But it feels to me like this legislation isn't for my clients so much. It's more for the people who are sucking an awful lot of data. They don't just want to know what your email address is and what time you're available for a meeting and what you want. They want to go after the people like Google and Facebook, who are gathering way more details than just an email.
I mean, my feeling is, as an ex-civil servant, is that with a lot of this legislation, the end goal is often just to get a culture change, just to get everybody thinking about the data that we now store. And I think, because I would be surprised actually if they did go after Google or something like that. It's quite difficult, I think, for governments, because if they go to court, there's unlimited damages, which makes them make sure, and this is, I think, the key thing about this one. What has been hitting the headlines, as I understand it, is really the 20 million euro fines that could be enforced upon those companies who aren't kind of up to date on this kind of stuff. So I think that's been the thing that's been leading a lot of people to sell services and to keep, if you like, promoting that end fine. But I don't think I think it's very unlikely to see that happen.
Yeah, I think so.
Largely.
I mean, certainly for somebody like me. I guess there are instances, though, where we give over a very large amount of our data. So I guess the perfect example would be Facebook, which, as we're recording this interview, this discussion, is really in the news because Mark Zuckerberg's been up in front of Congress and what have you. Because they don't really just hold data; they kind of hold the keys to unlocking what we really do with our lives. Where we go, who we talk to, the kind of political persuasion or possibly sexual orientation, and all of those kind of things. They've got a lot of that, and it feels to me like these laws drawn up by important people in important political positions are trying to regulate that kind of stuff. A few years ago, do you remember there was that dating website which promoted sort of promiscuity and cheating on your wife? Can't remember what the name of that website was. I think it was based somewhere in North America. I can't remember. But their database was leaked, and obviously that had huge implications because you'd signed up for the service, obviously done something that perhaps you should be ashamed of, and then it would, a lot of marriages and whatnot broke up because of that, because the data wasn't held tightly enough. So I can see from that point of view, as we surrender more and more about ourselves, and our mobile phones keep a track of where we are and who we're talking to, and the little Google Home or the Amazon Alexa is collecting data about what you sound like and the kind of voice requests that you do, and possibly listening to conversations that are going on in your house. This data does need to be locked down. So it feels to me that's where this legislation is going.
Yes, I think it has to be there, doesn't it? I mean, for the UK at least, there's always been data protection, but it's out of date because I think it was 98 when they last had regulations, and obviously the net has changed since then. But also all the other things which apply, at least to us in the UK, and they have the equivalents in the US, things like Freedom of Information Act. This is all incorporated, and I think one thing, I think governments have to create this, because at the end of the day, it's very expensive for the EU to have, I think, something like 28 different sort of data protection organizations out there with different rules. So I think a lot of what we're hearing from this is updated, but also is just an amalgamation of stuff that's already been there. I mean, and also the fear aspect, something that gets me on this is that in the UK, we're all supposed to be registering ourselves to the Information Commissioner's Office. Any of us who, hold any information on our computers about the people we do business with. But, it's only got like 500,000 people on that register, but there's 5.5 million businesses out there in the UK. So it's illegal not to be on that register. But I would guess most businesses aren't,
It feels a bit like history repeating itself, doesn't it? With the cookie law that we had. I'm guessing that was that a European thing, or did that stretch to North America as well, or was that just even a British thing?
No, it was an EU thing. Okay. But again, this is absolutely because that was 2012, and we see exactly the same thing going on. But also there was an 11th hour U-turn, which makes, our decision to, if you like, bury our heads a little bit and see how it pans out is not such a bad idea, because if we'd have followed the EU cookie law of 2012, we would have been implementing a lot of stuff which wasn't required in the end, like we had to have an opt-in before you could drop any cookie. But do you know what? That's the interesting thing on this one is that again, because what we're trying to do with this one is look at what is personal data. Anybody who stores or collects that data needs to act responsibly in the way that we've just sort of lined out. But where it gets really knotty, or where you can go down the rabbit holes, is when you go into the bit that is classed as online identifier as personal data, and that would include cookies. So by the fact that you're supposed to get consent for an online identifier, which cookies is included, means that you would need to have an opt-in. But if we look at the ICO's own site at the moment, which must be compliant as they see it, it doesn't require you to do an opt-in. It's not going back to the cookie law of 2012 before the U-turn. It is as it is now, where it drops the cookie and lets you know it's done it.
Maybe they're waiting until the 25th of May, David.
Could be.
ICO is the UK body which oversees all of this, ICO, and it oversees all of this sort of stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's not just. I mean, the reach of the legislation is enormous, though, isn't it? Because it's not just cookies or email addresses or names or telephone numbers. I mean, as far as I remember, if I'm correct, it even stretches to things like scooping up your IP address. Because obviously your IP address could be a personal identifier. In my case, my home where I'm recording this has a unique IP address, and it's absolutely my own. So if any traffic comes via that IP address, it's completely bound to me. And so it is rather broad. I know that in our communities on Facebook, we've had quite a few intelligent, certainly more intelligent than my position, people who've written documents explaining very coherently, look, you've on your website is this plugin, and this plugin is doing this and this and this. You've got this plugin and it's doing this and this, and you've got this plugin. So they're letting their clients know a la carte, if you like, what the site that they're handing over is doing for them. I think that would be quite a nice. That would be a nice way for plugin developers of anything which is like sucking in this stuff, contact form data, or even supplanting cookies onto the site and so on and so forth. It would be good if they had a little bit on the the WP repo or buried in their site somewhere, which you could just copy and paste into something like that, which says this is what our plugin does, in order to make an email that you would send out to your clients nice and easy to generate. That would be a good thing, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I borrowed that idea. I mean, I did a video for my clients, which I made, and I created a page as well, which, if you like, I was opting out of taking responsibility for GDPR. I was just saying, look, I use these services, and this is what we do with our backups of your information.
Yeah.
And, I can't take responsibility for things which I don't control. So an example of that would be WordPress itself. It's a blogging platform which collects people's comments, but presently by default it doesn't allow a way for you to ask for permission to gather that information. So WordPress itself, 30% of the internet is not GDPR compliant as such. And so that's my example, if you like, with other things as well, to say, well, I can't take responsibility, but here's what we use.
Yeah, I think it's quite a nice, it's almost like a little nice side shift, isn't it? If you do simply say, you've got WordPress, these are the plugins, and this is what they purport to collect. We're not doing the hosting, which in my case, I am. So, your data's held on this facility. You can go and look at their website and see how they've complied. These are the plugins, and if any of that doesn't make sense, you need to come back to us and we'll talk about it later.
Yeah. There's two friends of ours, we could talk about them without naming them, that have had legal advice in some form. One of them who's paid for it themselves. They've got a couple of hours of a lawyer, good lawyer, according to them, people who have represented utility companies, so they know what they're talking about. And their kind of advice to our friend was, well, don't worry about it too much. Understand the basics, the stuff we've covered there, and try and implement that as best as possible. It's not really aimed at you, like pretty much what you're saying. Then on the other side, we have another friend who looks after an e-commerce shop for someone and has for years and takes care of their hosting through a third party. But they've got the lawyers in, and they've gone down all of the kind of rabbit holes, the areas where it's more tricky. So he's going to receive a 100+ page report from them about what his responsibilities are.
Oh, that would just terrify me. But also it is, we learned from him that it does cause him to, pause and worry and, possibly change his business. Whereas the other person that you mentioned, everything seems to be shipshape, we'll just carry on as normal. Which again illustrates perfectly how bizarre all this stuff is. You got professional lawyers both saying seemingly diametrically opposed things.
Yeah. I mean, what I've told our folks, because the same as you with the brochure sites mostly, the contact form is going to be the weak point. And there are a couple of sites where we have pre-ticked opt-ins to MailChimp, which is something which the Information Commissioner's Office, I think, have been quite clear that we shouldn't do, because that's not really asking for somebody to give their consent.
Is it okay if you did a double opt-in, if they then, upon submitting that form, got another email which said, from MailChimp, said, we're thinking about putting you on this list, but you'll have to push this button. That would be okay, would it?
Well, I would have thought so, but the thing is, that's the one thing that they've been clear on. But again, like you've just said, there's a grey area there, because to my mind, it's okay to pre-tick those things, because ultimately, with the double opt-in, they give the permission to MailChimp, to gather that information.
Yes.
So I think even when there's things that seem clear of what we must do as businesses, they're less clear the more we dig. Yes, it's a great example, I think.
It's real thorny stuff, isn't it? I think, having had this conversation with you, I think the approach that I'm going to take is I'm going to wait until mid-May and be compiling a document of the likes that you said you'd sent out, listing the typical plugins that we used. Because of the nature of the fact that each website is different, I'll probably amass a fairly big list.
Yes.
And then maybe somehow figure out some sort of mail merge or something and send it out as a document. And say, if you've got any concerns, come back to us. But this is the sort of stuff that you've got to be thinking about. But I think because they're just ordinary business people, they're probably not too worried about it. And that's going to be my approach. Contact them before the deadline. Say, this is what we're doing. If you've got any concerns, come back to us. But I don't feel particularly well armoured to answer any complicated questions that might come back. I feel almost like I'd have to bat them off and sort of say I don't know the answer to any of those, which seems a bit of a shame. Even though I've attended a few talks about it, I still don't feel I could answer the questions honestly, because I'm not really sure what the law tells us we have to do. And, if opposing lawyers are telling people opposite things, it feels that maybe even the lawyers don't yet know.
Yeah, I think so, because it's the technical side of things, isn't it? I know you know what governments are trying to do with this, and it's a good thing. We do need to be more responsible. And largely it's about what you said earlier, the auditing, knowing where our data is. And even doing that for myself, I realized, gosh, this is quite complex. I have, some servers which I'm renting, and then they're managed as well by other companies. But I have things like Mailgun, which sends out the emails. And I'm not quite sure where, because there's one other little element, another grey area, which gets really tricky with this, which is data transfer outside of the EU approved authorities.
Yep.
That's I actually not quite sure where any data is moving around the world at any point.
I think the big companies have all either using already European data centers, but I know that a few of them, for example, I think Microsoft just simply bought a European data center to sort of mitigate this problem. But obviously, you know, startups can't do that. Most companies probably can't do that. But then if you use a platform like AWS or Azure or Google cloud services, then presumably there's boxes that you can tick that say, look, I want all my data about anybody who checks that they're living in the EU to be stored on European services. Oh boy, it gets complicated. In a way, I feel that being a WordPress person, just selling brochure sites, I really genuinely don't think that anybody's coming after me, and I don't think it's anything to worry about. I'll come back from WordCamp, which is this weekend, and I'll be shivering. I'll be a shivering mess because I'll realise, oh, I'm so wrong. I'm in deep trouble.
No, I mean, all I've done with mine is just say, look, here we are. We keep this many backups, so that's the stuff that people might have emailed you. You might want to clear out your Gravity Forms information every so often, and also that they might want to send, when somebody sends them an email, they might want to put something in the footer that says, you know, your right is to have your data removed if you like, so let us know. And that probably covers that right to be forgotten. And I think there's, you know, very simple things we can do just to abide by those basic things, the right to be forgotten, and that will let people know about data breaches.
I love the irony of having a contact form. Get in touch with us if you'd like your data to be expunged. And you just created another point of reference.
Do you know what? I did my video, which I was reasonably pleased with it. And I got nothing back apart from my brother, whose site I look after. And he says, what do I do about my notebook that I keep my appointments in? That was it.
Does it have teeth in the real world? You know, it's not. Is it just electronic data, or is it ledgers? You know, things that are old-fashioned copybooks and things. I wonder. That could be interesting. You've got to be able to burn the copybook or something in sight of a lawyer. Oh dear. Right. So the truth is, we don't know enough. We're waiting and seeing, and we're taking a sort of cautionary approach. But I do like your idea of contacting the clients, and I will do that, I think. Right. Are we done?
We're done.
Okay. In which case, we will go to the interview.
Yay.
Hello, I'd like to welcome to the podcast today somebody that actually, it turns out we've been trying to get on the podcast for, well, it's basically a year, but it's not because of any sort of estrangement or difficulty. It's basically because I moved house and then we forgot that we were going to do it, and then we kind of reconnected recently. It's Bob. It's Bob Dunn, Bob WP. Hi, Bob.
Hey, Nathan, I am so glad you reconnected. You know, it was like one of those things we were struggling to, you know, you had things going on. And then unfortunately, you didn't get me when I was moving, which wasn't just a matter of 2.5, 3 months ago. So the timing was perfect.
Yeah. There's very few times that I can honestly, hand on heart, say that I've been quite good at keeping track of things. But this podcast, I'm trying my best, and so things like this, I'm trying not to let them go through the cracks. But yeah, so I've got Bob on to talk today. Now, if you haven't heard of Bob WP, Bob Dunn, then frankly, you're probably not really trying very hard with WordPress, because Bob is, I think actually, Bob, it's fair enough to say that you produce more content than any other person in our space. I would imagine that's true.
Yeah, it's, you know, there might be some competition, I guess, depending how you look at the content and stuff. But I've been trying to stay pretty consistent for some time, and you know, whether that's a badge to wear or something to say I'm just plain out crazy, you know. I'm not sure which one it is, but I'll accept either one. So
yeah, but I mean, we'll get onto that a little bit later. But I came from Drupal, as the people who listen to this podcast will know. I came from Drupal about Ooh, 3 years ago. And at the time when I was sort of moving everything over to WordPress, I was listening to Drupal podcasts and I needed to supplant one for the other. And it was, it didn't take me long to come across your stuff. And so I've been listening to your stuff on and on, actually, for about 3 years. And it really does. It's an incredible, you never basically stop. So I guess that's my first thing. How on earth did you fall into making content? I read your biography on your website. You've got a very short one, and obviously you fell into WordPress, but falling into WordPress for most people is using it and designing stuff. What made you decide to put pen to paper or turn a microphone on?
Yeah, I think what happened is when we first got into WordPress, which was about 10 years ago or 2007, it was looking at the blogging aspect of it. I was running a design business and I thought I liked this idea of blogging to kind of, to share your expertise, to, give people a little extra content on your site, not just come and look at your services. So that was the initial draw. Then as I started getting into it more and more, and my background was design and marketing, I found that I liked the teaching part of it. And then with the teaching was, in-person teaching, some online teaching, even way back then. But then there was teaching, through content. And it just melded over the years, more and more of the content. I started to focus more on the blogging part of the site because I was seeing the results. I mean, it was something I enjoyed doing, something that was bringing traffic, and also it was something I could, when I went to workshops, if you want to know about this, I've got this post and this post. So it was always perfect hand in hand. My wife is the writer of the family. Yeah. I mean, she'd been writing a long time. So she helped me, I guess, to actually love writing more and more, because the more I did it, the less she still edits my stuff, but she doesn't have to quite edit as much as she used to in the old days. So she's taught me a lot about writing, and it just became naturally where that became a bigger and bigger part. And there was always that desire to, how much of this stuff could I just produce? I mean, I just love to do this full time. And there's always that thing of actually having to make a living. And even, sometimes there's still challenges in the kind of the position I'm in, but I just wanted, I just loved it. I loved putting content out. And I think it all kind of boils back to that. Even though I wasn't a trained teacher, my wife has the master's in education. I guess she was an influence on me in so many ways that, when I got into the teaching mode, as far as just working with people, hearing them get excited when they learn something, that pushed me more and more to put out more and more content. And it just was, okay, I can continue that, but I can do it through the blog and through podcasts versus going and teaching workshops.
Yeah. Well, when you started doing all of this, you sort of mentioned 2000 and something, was there a path at that time to kind of make this profitable, if you know what I mean? Was that something that was in the front of your mind, or was it purely, I'm just enjoying this and people are getting knowledge from it, maybe something will come down the road? Or did you have an approach of, I'll do this because something lucrative or, profitable, not necessarily lucrative, but will come down the road in the future?
Yeah, I think it always was. I'm a very flexible person, and I twist and turn with things that happen. When something needs to be changed, I don't sit there and dwell on it. So during all that time that I was, from the beginning when I was using content to help basically promote our business, I didn't really think of, I'm going to make it become more of my business and less of the design. That just came over time.
Yep.
And I tried a lot of things. I mean, it's funny because somebody will come to me and say, have you considered doing this, Bob? Yeah, I've done that, been there. So it's like I go down this list, online courses, webinars. I've done all that stuff, and I've learned, I've experimented, I've found what hasn't worked or what has worked. So there was never a path. It was always, I would get to a point and I would think, okay, this particular piece isn't working anymore, or for example, my design, I just became tired. I'd done this design and I'd done it in print, for years. So a total of, 20 plus years in design. And I was just getting tired of it.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I thought I can't have that attitude of, oh, another design job when somebody hires me. So I thought, how can I start moving what I've already created into filling more of my space? So it's been a constant morphing and not so much. And I think there was probably a point where I said, okay, I got to start monetizing this because this is what I want to do. So I did have to kind of plan that. But again, it was experimenting with different ways of monetizing.
Yeah, I have no idea why we started this podcast. It certainly wasn't in order to make a profit or anything like that. I think we just do it because it's fun at this point. I think it would be nice at some point if that were to change. Well, not that it becomes less fun, but that there was some sort of career path in it. But at the moment, I think we're where you were about 8 years ago or something. Yeah. We got a lot to learn. When somebody like me looks at somebody like you, you see the website and all the posts and the gargantuan amount of content. Sometimes somebody like me might get the impression that it's been, smooth sailing. Everything's been fine. There's been no bumps in the road because look, the content is constantly coming out. Have there been times when it's been hard or when you've been struggling to keep balance or to produce content or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I don't want to say it's a constant thing, but it is something to always, how can I say? Okay, so for example, like I said, I've tried different things. I mean, I've tried 3 membership sites, and I learned that wasn't for me, and the direction I went, and maybe the timing. There were different things that no, this isn't working. So I flipped the switch on those. It's like they're done, they're gone. They would have been essentially great, but I'm not going to just beat it to death. So yeah, there's times even sometimes I'll even with the podcast, oh man, am I really up to doing another podcast today? Or, I've got some content coming up. Sometimes the content just flows out. And as much as, I have an editorial calendar, I have things, but it's constantly changing. It's not like set in stone. It's okay. Well, this post is, why did I even think of this? It sounded great. Now it's off, so there is nothing is smooth sailing. It's just, sometimes I get on good rolls.
Yeah.
I'll just push out a bunch of content. Ideas come to me. And then there's those times that you just think, I just can't think of anything. And I just sit at this computer and it's like my mind is just blank. Yeah. And I'm thinking, I got content to do here.
When you now that you're in a slightly different position where you've got the whole week to produce content, it may be slightly different. But if we go back several years to the time when you were still being a designer and doing the regular stuff that I still do, did you struggle to sort of manage those, or as an example, I spend way more time than I should on this podcast, and I'm constantly beating myself up on it, thinking, actually, I really should be spending time building the sites that I'm paid to do. Did you have any of that?
Oh yeah,
that's good.
It is tough when it gives you when you've got the you decide this is the direction, this is a model I'm going to do. You have the time. When I was doing when we were running and doing websites, I wasn't blogging. Maybe I'd try to blog once a week. Do a post up. Podcasting, I actually was asked to. I had 2 colleagues back in 2010, I think it was, that said, you got to start a podcast, Bob. And I said, why? And they said, well, it'd be great for your business. You got the right voice for it. They were, just kind of massaging me, saying, you got to do it. And one of them had been a podcaster for a while. So they had me come to their workshop. And it really was intriguing to me, this whole podcasting thing. And afterwards, it was like, okay, well, this is good, but I seriously don't have the bandwidth for this. I just can't do it. And so, from 2010, then in 2014, I did my first podcast. So it took me 4 years to take that piece back around. And yeah, this stuff is time consuming. I mean, all of it. And I talk to people that are running business, writing plugins, selling products and services. And they say, how do you do this? It takes me I'm writing this 500 word post. It's taking me 4 hours. And, it's just like anything. I do it a lot and I've done it a lot. So that practice makes perfect. I mean, and it's a tough balance. And I definitely couldn't put out the amount of content I'm doing now with any, I mean, to me, I would think it'd be literally impossible because of the time I spend in all the different, pieces of it, producing it, marketing it, whatever.
Yeah. I noticed that in the very recent past, within the last year, I'd say, you made the decision to go entirely all in on content. So content is it now. That's what you do. And so at that point, I guess your productivity rates went through the roof. And looking at your website now, it's ridiculously prodigious. There's a piece of content. I mean, basically, it's every other day, isn't it? There's a large piece of content written by you, including screenshots, and then there's all the four podcasts that you're involved in. What would you? I mean, to me, when I produce this podcast, which lasts about an hour, I think it takes me about 6 in terms of every single bit lining up, from booking people to getting on the phone and writing the emails and then editing it all. Is that pretty bad or is that about right?
I know a lot of, when I was doing my first podcast that started out as the Do the Woo podcast, went into the e-commerce podcast. And I was also, getting sponsorships for that at that time. Yeah, I wrote a post on my process. Besides, like you said, just getting things in place, then I went through and I edited it, and I took out all the stuff. I really cleaned it up nicely. I put intros and outros, and it was a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And then the actual finalizing the file, I put it through from Camtasia into GarageBand into Phonics, and then up to wherever it goes. It was it was a lot, and I still do some of that, but at the now it's okay, I got this much content. None of my podcasts I've decided are on a real regular basis. They're not every week at this time. So I do them as I do them. They're part of my whole content network or whatever you want to call it. And I've become a lot less picky. And I've found that a lot of people say, hey, I like it a little rough around the edges. I don't need it so polished.
Yes.
And as long as you got decent sound, I think that's, critical. You don't want to be cutting in and out, have people, having that kind of an issue. But beyond that, it's I think we can spend too much time working on that and getting all this equipment and having just a fine, having mixers that do this and that. And it's my God, what are you doing, people?
Yeah, the content.
You're not NPR or something. You're not something that you're just putting out something, and people aren't going to, leave because you're using this mixer or not. So
do you script everything then, or do you sit down, got an idea, press go, and hope for the best mostly? Obviously, your stuff requires you to have thought about it, because inevitably it would be a 20-second episode if not. But do you just wing it mostly, or are you very much here's the well, I think I know the answer, but let's ask you anyway.
Yeah, now for the one podcast, the e-commerce one, I basically just put the questions down. Yeah. And I do that primarily to give to the guests, because some people are fine with, hey, I don't need to know what you're going to ask me. Others, they want to prepare. So as a courtesy, I put the questions together. With the other ones, none of it's scripted. So it is basically just working around 4 or 5 topics. And, I'm finding myself more and more straying from those and letting it go. And I let the person know, if you want to go off on a tangent or there's something, don't think you have to just answer this question, and if one of them doesn't work or something, we don't get to it, we're not going to sweat it. So I like to be a little bit more like, okay, let's just go with the flow and see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's the way I do it. Having said what you've just said, I completely realised I haven't shared any of my questions with you, which I've actually got it written in front of me. I must try harder.
That's okay.
I kind of figured you were the kind of person
surprised.
that would wing it anyway. You've got all of the. It feels to me like when you went to that conference and your body said to you, you got the right voice and the right temperament. It kind of feels there's quite a lot of truth in that. In that, I think you've got. Well, I know you've got exactly the right personality. Your lilt and your accent and your inflection, and you've got a nice deep voice and all of that. And you choose your words very well, and all of that stuff kind of draws me in. And yet we're constantly hearing all the time about, everybody should be doing a podcast and promoting their business. I'm not sure that everybody should be doing a podcast. I think it does take a certain type of person to pull it off. Do you agree? Or
I think so, because I've had a few people, and I've actually had a few people that say, "Oh, I want to do it. I don't want to do it," and they're primarily concerned about their voice. And I say, well, if that's the only thing, I don't know, unless you have a really, I hate Donald Duck voice. Of course, that might even work too. I don't know, but I think it does. It does take and I think it's like anything that you do, whether you're doing video or you're doing live video. Once you do it, you're going to find, if it becomes a real suffering episode of, anxiety for you, then probably that is not the thing to do. But if it goes smoothly for you, and, it's almost one of those things where it's hard to know till you do it.
Yeah, that's right. I agree.
And then again, that's not really the best way, because you don't want to start something 2 episodes into it, go, ugh. But I tell people, get on and be a guest on a podcast or two, see how that feels, and kind of, try to put yourself in the other person's place and see if there would be a comfort level there for you and just how you interact with people. I've when I was picking Brad Williams from Web Dev Studios for as a co-host, I was going through my brain all the people that I knew that had some knowledge of e-commerce. And there were several people that I really liked, but I thought just didn't quite mesh. I thought that's just not going to quite work for the podcast part of it, because it just, either their personality I didn't feel like would be complementary, we wouldn't be able to complement each other, or it just seemed like they were, I don't want to say, they weren't the most audio friendly type of person, kind of like just a straight tone voice that I thought, I don't think that's going to work.
It's a funny thing, isn't it? Because there's not a lot you can do about that. Most of the interactions I have with the people who come on the podcast are done through email or possibly Facebook. And it's not until that exact moment where you ring them up on Skype, in my case, and you have that little introductory moment where you sort of banter a little bit, and you do get an impression, don't you, of, oh, this is going to be a really good one because this person's really excited, or they're really eloquent, or they've just got an authority in their voice. I know exactly what you mean. It's a strange thing. I'm so glad that I've sort of fallen into this, though. It really, there's something about it that kind of speaks to me, and I'm really pleased that I did it. Are there any times that you've sort of got like really fed up with creating content, and I don't know, maybe you have turned around to people close to you and just said, no, absolutely no more of this. I am totally done with it. I just want a steady job with a paycheck.
Yeah, there has been times. I mean, my wife and I, we've had our own business for about 25 years. And in the whole concept of, just not content, just running your own business and the ups and downs of that, there's been times I've seriously thought about, man, I could really handle having somebody just give me a check every, week, every month or whatever. And, as time goes by and the more you do this for yourself, there's other little devils that rear their head and pop over your shoulder and say, could you really handle working for somebody again after this long? Or, and, I'm also at an age where, especially in technology, a lot of people don't look for hiring people at certain demographics, for technical positions, especially in a lot of the space. And that's kind of an unfortunate thing, but that's the way it is. So there has definitely been times that I've just thought, man, just screw it. I wish I could just, say whatever or go to somebody. I was joking around with some hosting company one time, one of the hosting companies, and I said, you want to just buy my blog and I'll just work for you? Can it be your blog now? It's like, just, and then you could just pay me. But yeah, I think, and as much as we all like to say in this industry or in this space where you're working for yourself and, that everything is, everybody's always happy and they're passionate and they're doing what they love and they're just, I imagine they have their times too. Sometimes they just if it's even for a short moment, they go,
well,
boy,
most people get to sort of you sort of bury it, don't you? Or your colleagues know about it. In this situation, the podcasting and the blogging work that you do, it's quite an isolating thing, really, isn't it? You've got if you've got your family, they get to know about it, and that's great. But it's it's a difficult one. I mean, I'm not at that point. I still really, really like doing this podcast. It's without doubt my favourite bit of the week. But there's definitely been moments where that thing has stared over my shoulder, just sort of nagging me a little bit and sort of saying, you should be doing something else. There's a better use of your time than doing this podcast. But we've managed to churn out one a week. We've gone for the approach of one a week, unlike you.
Oh, yeah. And that makes sense.
Yeah. So excuse me, I know that in this country, at least anyway, talking about money is a really difficult subject. And whilst I'm not going to ask you to disclose figures or anything like that, do you find that your new content only approach to life, does it provide you with that sort of stability, or is it very uppy downy?
It's kind of been a transition for me because you are looking at monetizing your site, basically. So I've done different parts of it, and it is an up and down thing, and you're going to, there's going to be this sweet spot you're going to find, and you're going to have to find some balance there or whatever. But yeah, for my podcast, I was having sponsors for quite some time, and I know a lot of podcasts that have sponsors, and it got to a point where the sponsorship was not that I felt they were tying my hands, but more or less, I just was tired of, I essentially felt like I was, even though they didn't take it that way, I was begging for money all the time.
Yeah.
And that was more of a personal, decision.
Yep.
Not so much as it should be a monetary decision, but it was a personal decision because I just, all these people I was talking to all the time, I've considered colleagues, friends in the space. And so there is a constant challenge of tweaking how you have to kind of fight certain, like affiliate marketing. People have this image of affiliate marketing as, where devils from the abyss of hell or something, and we, whatever. And it's like, no, we're people trying to make a living, and we are doing it, we feel, in the right way, or in a way that, doesn't cause you any pain, doesn't make the content any less useful for you. So there's that constant, you got to work it and massage it. And it can be a challenge going to this. And, unfortunately, I'm not like a lot of the big, some of these people in the space that can do something like this, and they can, just, hey, people just give them money, throw money left and right, because they've got, millions of people that adore them and, fondle over them and everything. And it can be challenging. And I think, that whole adage of, passive income and all that stuff, that's a bunch of crap as far as I'm concerned, because, it really, nothing I'm doing. I mean, passive, you always work up to that passive income.
Yeah.
And then then income can be passive in a way, but then you're continuing to do other things to create more of that supposed passive income. So it's constantly working to become passive. So I don't know. That sounds kind
no,
of
I know exactly what. Yeah, yes, yeah. It's a difficult one because I think the sponsorship thing, which you've clearly decided to sort of leave behind, that in a way is much more steady, isn't it? And but in my case, hard to find because I don't really make much of an effort with that. It's just not really me. So I don't try very hard with that. But then the affiliate, but it doesn't sort of have that sort of sleaze or whatever attached to it, whereas the affiliate marketing does get tarred with that brush. But I agree with you. If you're putting out the content, and so long as it's not, completely obvious clickbait, and you're doing something that's worthwhile. And I really like your approach to it. You've got a really honest approach. You say quite explicitly, here's a bunch of links. You've got a great big page full of them, and it would be really nice if you buy any of these things because of all the other stuff I've been doing all these years. Why not buy it through my links and sort of buy me a biscuit? I think that's great. I really like that approach.
Yeah, and that's the way you got to approach it. I mean, it's and like I said, it's something that a lot of people love the idea of it and the concept behind it, but it does take some serious time and a lot of effort to really get it to even start working for you, at a certain level.
How do you, sort of going to come onto the final couple of questions, if that's all right. How do you actually keep yourself kind of efficient? You mentioned a minute ago, maybe it was before we started the call, I can't remember, that you sort of like Post-it notes or a board or something like that. Because I'm, it's difficult for me. I've got like 3 or 4 people juggling at the same time for this podcast, and that's all I've got going on, and I struggle to know where I'm supposed to be. You're doing like 50 times the amount I'm doing. How do you begin something and end something? Do you use Asana or Trello? Or I'm just really interested. Basically, I'm just stealing your brain.
Yeah,
just dumping your brain. How do you do it? How do you manage all the stuff that you've got to do?
I'm a horrible multitasker, and I don't mean I do it horribly. I do it madly. My wife is she has to start a project and complete a project. I bop around between projects really easy, so I at any time can have several posts going on. And which one? I have a thought on this one. I'm going there and do this or whatever. I don't have a real method to my madness. I mean, I do a lot. I do have an editorial calendar, although as I was explaining to you before the show, it's very it's changing all the time. The editorial calendar, probably people love the idea, but getting things down, getting them pat down, don't worry about it. Well, me, I'm always, move this post over here because now I have this idea and I'd like to push this out because of this reason or the timing of this. So I'm constantly juggling it. So it becomes a calendar of, things that come and go a lot. My content, I just keep notes. I keep notes, some stuff in Evernote. I'm not real organized with like Trello. I mean, I've used some of these tools before with other projects with people, and they just don't work for me. There's something about it. I feel like I spend more time working on that, actually doing that than actually doing the content. So I'll like, if I get an idea for a post, I'll go in and I'll start it as a draft. I'll just jump into my dashboard, put the title, put a couple lines in it, save it as a draft, and then it's on my editorial calendar, and I can go back and, I remember I was going to do that. So it's kind of a weird way of doing it, but it works for me because it's right there visually, because that's where I spend most of my time anyway.
Yeah.
And, I use Google Docs for my podcast to kind of do show notes and keep, be able to send that out and keep it organized. I don't have an optimal process because there's sometimes I go, I'll lose something, or, where did I put this? Or, I thought I'd saved it here and it's over somewhere else or whatever. But yeah, it is a lot. And I think it's just kind of the nature of how I work.
Yep. You're totally the antithesis of me in that respect. I would love to have that ability to flit from one thing to the other, but it turns out my memory is like that of a goldfish. in that I can barely remember what I was writing 5 minutes ago, let alone, what I was writing yesterday on this blog post over here. I guess it's just horses for courses. Your methodology, your ability to do that, though, I think is key to you being able to produce a lot of content. I would be fixated on producing this one bit until it was finished, and then I'd press go, and thereby I would hardly ever press go. The publish button never gets touched. Oh, well, you know what? I think we could probably talk for another half an hour, but that's kind of the sweet spot for us. I've really enjoyed that. Basically, I feel that I've brought you onto the podcast so that I can steal everything that you've done over the last few years. That's brilliant. Anything you'd like to say before we knock it on the head?
I think, boy, I it's always one of those things you wish you had some epiphany or words of wisdom and stuff. But, I think the most thing, anything I can, and I've said this a lot in the other podcasts, is I think for both my wife and I, because we're the same way, what has gotten us to where we are and what continues to get us along is the flexibility. I think being flexible, and especially in this technology age, I mean, WordPress, Gutenberg, all this stuff that's coming up, and everybody, and I understand there's a lot of reason behind the sweating, and, especially if you have products involved and all this stuff. But I let things kind of, slide off me, and I don't, how do you say? I don't sit
Obsess?
there and wallow in some. Yeah, obsess. That's it. I don't obsess over these things. Something changes, I look at it and I think, okay, this is going to be a challenge here. I can see why it's changing here. Okay, I'll do it. I'll move on. And that's the way, even with Gutenberg, I feel this way. And I feel this way with a lot of things in the WordPress. And I think I would have ended up being, in some Slack channel debating issues for 5 hours if I wasn't. Or, I'd be frozen at the computer thinking, oh, this has happened. Now the world's ending type of thing. And it's just like, okay, I got to just move on. And if it's something that I have no control over it, and it's like having the online courses that didn't work out for us.
Yeah.
I didn't, just keep agonizing over why didn't these work? They just didn't work. Okay, now I've got to move on and think of, what the next step is. So
be flexible.
Yep, that's it.
This podcast is going to be called that, isn't it? Be flexible.
Be flexible.
By Bob Dunn. Just one other question, actually. It's just popped into my head that I was thinking a few moments ago. You always come across as really, very relaxed, a very calm figure. Firstly, I'm sure that's true. Maybe you'll deny that, I don't know. But are you calm in all situations? If I was to put you on a stage at WordCamp Europe with 3,000 people in front of you, can you keep that perspective and that calm and that flexibility in all situations?
I would say almost all. It is a pretty much a natural feel for me. My wife she calls me bright side Bob because I'm always looking on the bright side. So it takes a lot to ruffle my feathers. Yeah. And if they are ruffled, it's pretty short lived. I mean, you have to do something pretty mean and nasty, and so I'm a pretty mellow kind of guy. Yeah. And that's just how I am. I'm one of those, I'm around, people know I'm around, but I'm not like in your face all the time. Yeah. Or, it's just, it's part of my chemistry, I guess, and then sure, I have my moments of anxiety and stress and whatever, like anybody does in life, but I try not to hang on to those too long.
Down about 400 feet from my house is a pub. And in that pub, I go quite a lot, and I stand and I talk to people because that's what I like to do of an evening. And as we've been talking, it's just occurred to me that I should really like to meet you in the pub one day.
Yeah, really.
Stand and one arm on the bar and just have a natter. I think that'd be really nice. Bob WP, Bob Dunn, whatever it is. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've enjoyed every moment of it. I wish it could have gone on longer, but I'm going to say sayonara from me, and maybe you could sign off as well.
Well, I got to tell you, this has been great. I'd actually love to be on again someday. If we continue the conversation.
How's next Thursday?
Yeah, really. Alrighty.
It's the weekly. What is it? Psychology session. Lie down on the couch. Tell me about your father.
No, but this has been a true joy. So
great.
I really enjoyed it. And I appreciate, and you're doing a great job. And I love your style. We could, like you said, I feel like we could talk and go on and on and on. So I thank you very much for having me on.
I'm going to press stop, and we'll probably natter for a bit after this as well. See you later.
Okay, take care.
And in fact, we are back again on the www.impactbnd.com site, where there are 20 stats and facts you can't ignore in your website redesign. We're looking at number 3. We love coming back to this article, don't we? Because it's just lots of amusing stuff in it. So Number 3 is when we focus on one thing, we ignore other things around us. And this happens a lot on the web because we are very task focused.
It's apparently called inattentional blindness.
Yes.
And I'm totally in agreement with this. I absolutely focus on the thing that I like on the page, and I get really quite annoyed when things interrupt that. So, modern marketeers pop-ups and things, I find that really disconcerting and annoying. And on this particular page, despite the fact that they've written that, they've got a blue opt-in box for an ebook, and it rolls in no matter where you scroll on the page. It follows you around, and I can completely ignore that. But then as soon as I notice it, it annoys me.
Yes.
But I'm ignoring all the icons on the left and all the right, and I'm focusing entirely on the single bit of text. So yes, I completely subscribe to this, and I guess this distills beautifully what the job of a website builder is, isn't it? It's just to make sure that the thing that you want people to focus on is right there, and everybody's focusing on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand it best when I think of selective hearing, because I definitely know I do that. When we start recording or anything, I hear all the outside noises I never heard through the rest of the day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's really weird. I don't notice anything outside, and then suddenly, as soon as I'm aware that we need to record and it needs to be quiet, then I hear everything. Yeah.
I really struggle with my hearing in a crowded situation, because it turns out that background noise to me is much louder than the thing that I want to concentrate on. And I don't know why that is, but I've noticed that in any situation, if I'm in a crowded room, everybody can talk to each other, but I simply can't do it. And I think there's probably quite a lot of psychology going on here. I was saying to you just before we started recording this that little blue thing, on some level, this little blue opt-in box which is floating up and down, on some level it's annoying me. It's not pricking me, saying, it's not actually making me cross, but on some level the fact that it's scrolling and it's trying very hard to pull the attention away is turning me off it. And I think actually I'm not going to fill it in just because you've tried a bit too hard with that. And I know that certainly internet marketers, they're desperate to shut down all the noise, aren't they? And they take away all the menus, and everything is simply a stream of just one thing to look at, in the hopes of keeping your attention on this one thing and not allowing you to go anywhere else. I'm not so sure about that, to be honest. I think my opinion about landing pages is probably different to most people in the marketing industry, but I don't really like them too much. I don't really know why.
Yeah. Do you know, I love anybody who's listened to this to tell me if there's any research that says whether if you remove the navigation, it actually does help on landing pages. Because I wonder if this one has actually been tested. So I'd love it to be proved to me.
I'd be really interesting to know also as well if the reading habits of people have changed. We've now got a generation who've grown up with the internet. And I wonder if, we talked about attention span being different because of the internet, and it's gone down according to this exact same page, actually. But I wonder if the way that our eyes flit around and the way that we scan and browse a page. So, for example, if I hold a non-fiction book in my hand, would I view that differently? I know that at my local school, the teachers say that very often the kids will come into school and they will try to scroll on the computer screen, even though it's an old computer that doesn't do that, just because they're used to that methodology of navigating things. And you wonder if, that quaint trope that sometimes comes out in science fiction stories where, oh, look, it's a book. Oh, I didn't know they still existed. You wonder if habits are changing and attention spans and focus in this particular case is altering because of the way that web pages are designed.
Yeah. Well, I just think we're really clever anyway as human beings. We've got all this data bombarding us all the time, visual and audio, and we know what to single out to listen to. In lots of people talking, we recognize people we know and love, over other sounds, which are exactly the same, if you like, in terms of level, volume, and timbre and stuff like that. We can still pick out things, and I think we just adjust, don't we, to what's around us.
I guess the internet marketers try to disrupt that all the time. Flashing text or something scrolling in or something popping up, and we just still have the ability to sort of remove it from our consciousness and focus on the things that matters. Right, there you go. There you go. Good fact. I like that one. Well spotted, David.
Thank you.
Okay, if that's the case, we're done. We're done for today's podcast. Thanks for listening. It's been a pleasure having you on. Please share this on Facebook or Twitter or basically spoil everybody's attention and try to get them to follow the podcast. That would be great. My name's Nathan Wrigley.
And I'm David Walmsley.
And we will see you on the next episode next week. Thanks for listening. Take care. Cheesy music. Cue. Thank you.